I'm vindicated, again. And for me, it has been imperative that the public is informed of how deep-rooted and how bad the British political system is, period. And so to have every single claim conceded on, I actually myself, the first thought I had was why, but I think it's important for people to understand that a big part of the reason why they conceded on all of the claims, though it's true that they fired me because I whistle blew, and they've particularly fired me because I have a fundamental belief in the sanctity of British democracy. Like, that was a reason for firing me. So, is that they did it because they wanted to protect who their funders were. One of their claims was that they had lost a donor, and if they had actually fought this in court, they would have had to reveal who their funders were. And so they've said, you know what, it's okay to put our entire reputation at risk.
Rather than reveal who's signing the checks.
Who our
so do you know who funds them?
I know several funders.
Well, don't say anything now.
Yeah.
Alex, I'm legally not entirely clear what the situation is. We should stress we've put a call into the Taxpayers Alliance. If Matthew Elliott would like to join us in the studio, that would be absolutely magnificent. Matthew, of course, called you a Walter Mitty fantasist, having been given essentially free rein by the BBC to malign you with a series of coordinated derogatory statements. He called you a so-called whistleblower, a Walter Mitty fantasist, and this smear attack was published by the website Brexit Central. Who runs Brexit Central?
Jonathan Isserby.
Okay.
Darren Grimes and Hugh Bennett were both employed by Brexit Central.
Isserby, formerly of the Taxpayers Alliance.
Yes.
So, how does it work on the ground? I mean, do they all meet up for coffees in the morning? These 9 right-wing lobby groups pretend to be kind of think tanks.
Well, it's in a number of ways, right? They all meet MPs and cabinet ministers occasionally together for specific issues or policies, and then they will also. There's a very close social circle as well. An extremely close social circle.
Which is why someone like me, who follows things quite closely, I get confused by how they move between each other's organisations.
Yeah,
the Institute of Economic Affairs, the Taxpayers Alliance, this Brexit Central, they're all kind of...
Like, I was interviewed for a job at Brexit Central, and then I was told, actually, you know what, why don't you work at the TPA?
Right.
Like, that's how my interview process was.
And you were fired from the so-called Taxpayers Alliance the day after this smear appeared. The
Brexit Central piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what reason did they give you at the time?
They said, we just think it's better if you just... If we can't have you
a parting of the ways.
They like muffled their excuse. They were like, it's been like you've been like missing work, and they just try to make up excuses.
And they've now accepted.
But they've now obviously accepted that they fired me because I have a belief in democracy.
And that is an astonishing thing. That I wish we lived in slightly less fractious times, because theoretically everybody should get behind that observation. You got fired from your job with a right-wing lobby group because you have a fundamental belief in the sanctity of democracy. So all of these people are welcome to come now and explain why having a fundamental belief in the sanctity of democracy offended them so much, and why it was so bad. And we'll read out any statement that's submitted. Of course we will.
And this begets the question is, why are they still being given a platform on any news publication or broadcaster?
No respectable broadcast organisation could have the Taxpayers Alliance on today, could they?
You say that.
I know they will, but only because they don't understand the gravity of what's happened overnight. Not because they're complicit or corrupt or anything like that. It's simply because they don't understand.
Right.
And the story won't get the coverage it deserves because they're so embedded and they're so... inextricably linked with politicians and journalists.
Yeah. And, the fact that Matthew Elliott was given a platform by Laura Koonsberg, by the BBC, to slander me, and yet I was never allowed, I've never been invited on for a one-on-one interview, even though it was my whistleblowing, even though it was my claim, my lawsuit against the Taxpayers Alliance, and yet they never invited me on to speak, to have an interview. Why?
And the scale of the attack upon you reached into the heart of government, focusing upon your former partner, your former boyfriend, Stephen Parkinson. They chose, essentially, to out you as gay in an attempt to discredit you by saying that the reason that you knew this stuff was pillow talk was kind of their excuse, wasn't it? And even now I find that astonishing that Parkinson's still at Downing Street.
Yeah. But this is how it is, right? This is what people are failing to understand. And you know what? It's also a big part of the responsibility of parliamentarians to hold the government to account. But from both sides, parliamentarians have been consistently failing to actually hold these people to account. And there hasn't been anyone who has continued that pressure. It's just gerrymandering here and there. Oh well, what will this mean for party politics? And I just keep saying, as a citizen, I risked my family's life to protect Britain. Yet parliamentarians can't risk their seat.
And I mean, that sounds strong, but one need only look at the rampaging mobs in Pakistan at the moment, objecting to a Christian Pakistani woman, and the homophobia that often goes hand in hand with that kind of fundamentalism could have endangered you and your family.
Exactly.
That's the bit I still can't quite believe. We spent an hour and a half this morning trying to unravel Theresa May's motivations on Brexit-related issues, but she must look at Stephen Parkinson every day and just sort of think, yeah, that kind of thing is fine. We can endanger people for telling the truth. We can punish people for telling the truth. We can try to silence people by trumpeting their sexuality, despite the fact that your own family, in some cases, were unaware of it. I mean, she must look at him every day and think, yeah, that's what I stand for.
Well, when you spend so many years in the Home Office and send out vans to tell people to get home, you sort of lose sight of that kind of standard of morality or ethics.